as much as like the successes of getting contracts and these kind of things, of course, are important, like the success of going through something where you don't really know if you can do it in a big way and not believe in yourself, and your business is now you. And that's a really scary thing, putting yourself out there and feeling like you are at that level, because we all have imposter syndrome.
Welcome to the Empower LEP Collaborative Podcast, a podcast to empower, inspire, and collaborate with aspiring and practicing licensed educational psychologists and like-minded professionals. We're your hosts, Jana Parker and Bethany Zoller, bringing professionals together to talk business, private practice, and find inspiration from our community.
Hello, and welcome back to the Empower LEP Collaborative Podcast. We are your hosts, Jana Parker
and Bethany Zoller.
And we are excited today to be interviewing Misty Bonta, who is an LEP. Welcome, Misty.
Well, thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
Great, thanks. You are our first guest.
Woo, I feel so honored. Woohoo.
Yeah, well, we're really happy to have you. So we're going to go ahead and start by just asking for a little bit of information about yourself, your business, where you're located.
Sure. So now I'm located in San Diego. I've been a school psychologist for 17 years, but I went to Sacramento State and worked in Sacramento for many years. And worked in several different districts in Sacramento, moved to San Diego, worked in San Diego Unified and then a charter school district, and just made the leap to private practice July of 2023. So very new into this. However, been thinking about it for many, many years, got my LEP in 2016. So it's been a long time coming. And my business name is Get Psyched, LLC. Yes.
I love it. Yeah, I like
it. And really, it's still like morphing into what it is, but my really big passion is mental health in schools, and bridging that gap between kind of the clinical world and the educational world. So I have a partner that is part of Get Psyched as well. That's a social worker, licensed clinical social worker. And we wanted to really provide trainings to other school psychologists and really enhance that school-based mental health toolkit for school counselors too, school social workers, all of that. We know that there's been such an increase in mental health and the complexity of that too, right? I've been really interested lately in the intersection of like autism and like anxiety and depression and trauma and all these things that just, co-occur and coexist. And yet we're supposed to kind of understand that and make, appropriate recommendations and those kind of things. So all that to say, Get Psyched does do those trainings, and I do IEEs. I contract with districts for assessments, and then I do have a counseling caseload as well. So I have an office where clients come and I provide counseling services as well. So it's kind of broad right now. I'm not sure how that will look in the future, but wanted to kind of catch a big net of opportunities, and
That's such a huge need, Misty. I mean, just and what you touched on about schools having to be able to understand autism and all those side characteristics. I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't get that training in grad school.
No,
right?
I did not get that training in grad school for sure.
Absolutely not. So yeah. I think it's super awesome what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I do too. So you literally just left the schools. You were working for the schools full time and you just took that leap.
Yeah. So I was the last. Thank you. Technically, I opened the LLC in October 2022, but I only had one client for counseling that whole time because I was working full time. So kind of opened it in like a family really wanted me to work with them. And I don't know, I already wanted to do it, but that was like the push, right? That was like, you can do this. And last year I was working with a charter school organization and I was their wellness like program manager or mental health program manager, which I loved. However, I kind of opportunities, like I said, I have this colleague that wanted to work with me, and my husband, was like, you can do this. And the friends were like, you can do this. Right. So just totally made the leap in July. And my last day was July 1st.
Yeah.
That's it. So,
awesome. Yeah. I was a year, like my last day was July 1st, 2022. So
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
It's scary. It's definitely scary, but exciting. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So what does your day-to-day look like? Bethany asked me this recently, and I was like, oh, because now you're talking about you're doing assessments for school districts, you're doing trainings for school districts, you're doing some counseling. And so, yeah, what does your day-to-day look like?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, it took time to find a groove because it's not as prescribed as working with the school district, right? And there's so many different hats you're wearing and pulled in so many different directions. So it looks different day to day, right? Like I have 2 days where I kind of am more focused on the school district that I contract with, right? There's days where I kind of focus more on the trainings, and then one day where I kind of focus more on the IEEs part of it.
Yeah.
So I've kind of had to break it up a little bit. It's not perfect, right? Because you're getting phone calls and emails and all the things that you're trying to but I found I had to kind of put in time for those things. Otherwise it doesn't get done.
Right.
And I felt too scattered, right? If you don't kind of align those, break that up in my mind too. Yeah, my day to day. So I've been working over the break because it's different,
So both have two.
I'm doing a training in January on autism and mental health. So how do you differentiate ED and OHI and autism for school district? So I've been working on that in addition to just writing reports. And I had a parent consultation before this for an IE. Yeah. Typically then I have the counseling too. So it's also navigating. Sometimes I'm working at home, and then sometimes I do have an office. It's very close to my house. I got very lucky to kind of use that, and I only use it by the hour. So I pay $15 an hour for it. So it's all furnished and ready to go. Yeah. I got very lucky with that as well. So it's long days. But I think I worked long days before. Yeah. But they have been longer, especially at the beginning. I think, hopefully that changes over time, but there's a lot to navigate, right? Yeah. So,
Can you share a little bit about, I just think that this would maybe be an interesting thing for people to know about with this office space that you're renting. How did that opportunity arise? Is it like a WeWork kind of thing? Or is it does somebody else have the office? How does that work? Because people think that getting an office space is a really big deal, but I actually think there are so many ways that you could do it where it's not really a big deal. And I don't want that to feel like a barrier for people to feel like, oh, I can't do this because I have to rent a space. So how did it work out for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I had one of the client I was doing counseling with was being tested by a psychologist. And so we were consulting, and she shared that there was a group practice. So it's a group therapy practice is the, office building, right? And there's 8 furnished offices that they have people that are some that come there all the time, and then others that they rent out, which I found out a lot of them do, right? A lot of them don't have, people there all the time. And so often they are looking for people to rent out by the hour. I did have to get a mailbox. So it's $50 a month and then $15 by the hour is how that works. I get, invoice at the end of the month, but I get to just sign up. It's really easy. And yeah, now that I've kind of realized, that many different options on that. People are looking for renting out spaces, or like you said, even shared spaces. But this has been great because it is a therapy office. So they have komochis and, all the toys in there and stuff. If you're doing testing, it's set up kind of perfect because they do counseling with kids in that building. So that's been really great. And they're happy to have a psychologist that can do testing. So that also is the other part of that, which is great. I can put my business card out. They refer clients because out of the group, I'm the only one that does any testing, right? So that's been a big piece too. I think that was really, I didn't think about before, that I think is a good thing to think about for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. You can get a lot of business from them.
Yeah.
And so what does your partner do? How does that work? And does that person work out of an office also? How do you even split? You don't have to get into the nitty gritty of this, but how does it work to have a partnership?
That's a great question. She is only my partner for the trainings on mental health for schools.
Got it.
So not all the other practice parts of it, just for those trainings.
Got it.
Because I wanted her expertise. She's been in the field 35 years and all of that. Her and I were program managers together and created a mental health program. This was years ago with a charter school. So that's how we knew each other, and we became friends since then. We've talked about this need because we saw it. We were supervisors for associate level people in the schools and saw just the need of training and support that we all need. So we split the costs and those kind of things 60-40. I mean, but if we did have to figure that out, what felt comfortable, because I'm the one doing the advertising. I'm typically the one really putting it all together and that kind of thing. So I do more of the lifting in that regard. That's why it wasn't just a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
And she felt comfortable with that too. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think it was important that our friendship, because stay professional, that you talked about those specifics before getting into that. It's been great. So that's, we do those trainings once a month, or with the school district call. So she only helps with that piece.
Great. And then, so how do you market for your business and your services? And then if people who are listening want to get either, have you come for a district training, or right. if they want to, access you, because I know you're really active on social media as well. How do people connect with you or access your services?
So for advertising at the beginning, it was a frantic, just reaching out to everybody, emailing every SPED director and those kind of things, districts, right?
Yeah.
And I think what really helped was reaching out to people, right? The cold emails, you're only going to get so many back, right? I didn't get as many back, but people that or just reaching back out to districts, maybe you had relationships with, and those kind of things was where that was really, fruitful, right? To make those connections. I do use social media. I have a Facebook page, which has been helpful with other school psychologists to advertise too, but I use an Eventbrite to manage it's a cost, it's a monthly cost, but actually to manage those trainings, to advertise, to, do the payments and all of those things. And then I've partnered with, or CASP will sponsor our events for CEUs, which was just sharing with them the learning objectives and kind of what their training will be going over. And then they approve that, and you have, they'll provide the CEUs, which was huge because that's for BBS, that's for NASP, that's for CASP, right? So we just collect the money and send it to CASP, and they take care of the CEUs, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was it was social media, it was LinkedIn, it was Eventbrite, and honestly, just making connections and reaching out. And then once we did a couple trainings, right, the word is kind of spread from people that have come. So that's what has been helpful as well.
Yeah. And I know we could say this at the end, but since we're on it now, where can people find you?
Sure. Yeah. So Get Psyched LLC is my website. For the events, you would do Get Psyched LLC at Eventbrite, and I can share that link. And then that has all of our upcoming trainings, and that's where you register and you pay. Again, we've been doing once a month. We've been doing something on educationally related mental health assessment. They're only an hour. It's Wednesdays, 12 to 1. And we focus on a mental health assessment based on a certain topic. So the last topic we did was on psychotic disorders. Before that, it was on trauma. Before that, it was on school avoidance, right? So we kind of go through some information and actually walk through a case and problem solve, right? How would that assessment look like? How can we intervene with that? How can we support that student or family with those unique challenges? Our next one will be in January, and that will be on anxiety and depression. Those kind of are monthly. And then we have a peer support group. It is just once a month. Again, it's an hour, and people can bring their cases, they can bring their questions, they could just bring whatever. It's been, just a safe space to get support. And Francis and I also host that. And then we've done some bigger workshops that were 2 hours. The last one we did was on counseling skills for school-based mental health professionals, which was awesome, and realized we needed much more time than 2 hours for that workshop, because we went through various modalities and just, I gave them like 1 or 2 activities that you can use and tried to make it very practical and hands-on. And I think we got really good feedback. So we'll probably do that one again, but extend it even longer, because I feel like that was so helpful, something I would have still love to have, even though I'm doing the training, right? Something that we all need to kind of talk about more, and we don't get as much in our school-based training.
Yeah. How did this become a niche for you? How did you because for me, I went all into like school neuropsychology and, learning disabilities and ADHD and that kind of thing. And it sounds like your path has really been mental health. And how did you get all into this, and what other, what kinds of trainings have you done to increase? Because I feel like all of us are so, the really cool thing about this field is that we get to take professional development and continuing education and the things that really interest us. And so we end up really becoming an expert in something. I'm always really interested in hearing people's stories of how they got there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, you're spot on, right? You gravitate towards that. So from the beginning, my training at Sac State did have a lot of mental health. We had, like several classes on counseling, individual and group counseling and those kind of things. So from the training already, I felt like that it was just already why I was getting in the field, right? Was that. So right when I got in the field, I worked in West Sacramento, and they had quite a lot of complex mental health needs going on. And I was at the high school level, and I worked with the juvenile hall kids, and I also worked at a continuation school. So while doing triennials and stuff was necessary, it was behavior, it was mental health, it was, even gangs and violence and those kind of things, right? Substance use. So from the get, it was just where it was also worked, right? And what I wanted. So I think both of those things came into play. And then anytime I went to CASP or NASP, those were the trainings I went to, right? I did the neuropsych program too, so I am very much interested in all of the other pieces of our role, but I think I gravitated towards that. And in addition, I did like any training that was part of the county or anything that I could see, right? Because I also realized, as much as, we have awesome training opportunities at our conventions, we also like to go ones at social work conventions or school counselor conventions or through the county mental health was really huge to see a different lens too. And also see how they're kind of framing school supports and those kind of things was really helpful to get those connections, I think. So there's like an annual convention of mental health for the county of San Diego here that I go to, and those kind of things as well. And then I've done things like through PESI or those kind of things to like get additional certifications. I think I've done a lot of as many as I can of those as well. So that, any opportunity really. I just love the topic, and it just was why I came in the field in the first place.
Yeah. And I think that's so cool that your practice is really counseling based. You can do assessment, but that's not where you'd prefer to focus, it sounds like. Yeah.
I love assessment. I love assessments when there's not, 20 at the same time, right? So
yeah.
I could definitely I love neuropsych too. And I loved that program was like career changing for me, doing Dr. Miller's program. And I love finding out, like playing detective and those kind of things. And I do feel strong in that. But there's something about mental health that's just always been something that I wanted to do more of. So, yeah.
I was actually full transparency, I was like the opposite.
Right.
I did not want to do counseling. And I think I got out of the school psychology profession and I became a program specialist right when school psychologists were having to start doing more counseling. And so I never had a counseling caseload, my entire career.
Right.
And that wasn't my niche. That wasn't where I was going to feel comfortable. It wasn't where I spent. I felt like all of a sudden they were like, okay, school psychologist, and this is why you're doing training, right? Because all of a sudden they were like, okay, now you're going to have a counseling caseload. You've been doing assessments for 15 years, but now we're going to have you be a counselor also. And I would have been like, I have not done this since grad school.
Right.
I am not prepared, nor do I want to. So
Right.
I was like, can you get the ones who want to and train them? But as a school psychologist, you can't do that. You can't, unless you're in a district that's actually going to, take that guidance. But
Right.
I mean, like, just because you've been trained in school psychology does not necessarily mean that you are going to excel as a counselor.
No.
Or want to.
Two different skill sets, and it's very like, I think, different sides of our brain working as well. It's a lot more like vague and abstract and these kind of things versus like data and the things that I think are kind of the bread and butter of school psych and assessment. Yeah, there was something I was going to say, but I can't remember, but it will come back to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's the cool thing about private practice is you get to go, okay, you know what? Like, this is where I shine. This is what I'm passionate about. This is my niche. This is what I want to do. And you take that skill set with you and keep developing it and support the community and of people and professionals with what you have to offer the world. That's great.
What I remembered I wanted to say was what we also noticed, because with your LEP, you can supervise associate level MFTs or social workers or LPCCs if you do some additional clinical supervision classwork, which was something I got to do right after that law passed, right? And I don't think a lot of LEPs know that. And it was such an incredible program that we did, right? So supervising those level of, their postmasters working on their hours, clinical hours. What we also noticed was the gaps in their training and being prepared to work in schools, right? Like, we know how to work in schools, we can do that. We know a lot of different pieces and we know how that translates then to the classroom. And so those two worlds, that's where Francis and I, like I said, my colleague, it's like both of those things, we need support. Sometimes they were too clinical in nature, those kind of things as well. Yeah. And that didn't really work well in a school and in a 30-minute session. But what we're bound in school often by very short sessions and with students that don't want to get pulled from class in these unique kind of circumstances in schools. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So what would you say, I mean, I know it's only been a little bit of time since you've left the school district, but what has been your biggest win since you've started your private practice?
Gosh, there's so many things, right? That's a big question.
You can name more. Yeah, it can be. Yeah. It can be multiple. I did
the win with making money at all, like in a very simple, like, am I going to make it? Right? I told myself I'm going to give myself till December. We're in December, and if I've not made anything, I'm going back. Like, that's I've tried it, and that's okay, and it didn't work out. So the biggest win is that January of 2024, I'm not going back. Yeah. Not turning back at all.
Yep. Good job.
Yes. Yeah. And also, as much as like the successes of getting contracts and these kind of things, of course, are important, like the success of going through something where you don't really know if you can do it in a big way and not believe in yourself, and your business is now you. And that's a really scary thing, putting yourself out there and feeling like you are at that level, because we all have imposter syndrome, but it comes out even more, I think, in another way this time. But you can do it. And I think that's maybe like the more holistic win I've had. Yeah. And I've been very reflective now that we're coming to New Year's Eve and like this kind of timeline that I gave myself. I'm like, I don't know what will be next. I don't know exactly what Get Psyched will look like in the future, but I'm here for it.
Yeah. That's so awesome. And if you had one thing that you would tell yourself before you start, now that you know what you know now, what might you have told yourself before?
I would have said, just slow down, breathe. It will work out. It will be okay. Yeah, definitely.
Just like gave me chills.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's an incredible journey, and it's messy and scary and yet worth it and so needed. That's the other thing I learned is just how much LEPs are needed. Mm-hmm. In the IAE world, I mean, my goodness, the attorneys were like right on it, like calling back and too many referrals, right? Like, but that just shows you how much of a need that is also in the community for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bethany, do you have any follow-up questions?
What's your favorite counseling modality?
Mm.
What's your type? What do you use?
That's
Are you
like
a
saying my
DBT
favorite
girl?
food, Bethany.
Are you a DBT girl? Solution
Well,
focused brief counseling?
I mean, it really depends on the client. I think I'm like a
Yeah,
mixed bag. So all those
I know.
tricks come out, right? But I've been in the ACT train
Oh,
lately.
yes. Yes.
Um,
I want to get more
yes,
training on that. I don't feel like I love the thinking, like acknowledge the thought
right. Without
and
judgment.
having that distance. It's
Right.
good.
I think I
Most of the
have
stuff I just use on myself, though. I think it's
all my clients are boys and they're on the spectrum and they're teenagers. So
Mhm.
they've gone through a lot of different modalities, and that kind of has seemed like it's worked better to just like own it and not try to minimize, like approach the depression and get to know it and anxiety and those kind of things versus
Yes.
fighting that, because they've been fighting it for so long, they're exhausted. So if I bring up a DBT tool, CBT tool, they don't want to hear about it. They've gone through all of that before. So coming at it in a different way, that's why I'm, yeah.
How do your autism and neurospicy friends do with all of the imagery of ACT? Because isn't there a lot of like
Yeah, like you're
like
on a
I can
train.
think of the leaf floating
Yeah, the leaves
in
on
the
a string.
stream.
Yeah, actually they've done really well. These specific.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah,
Cool.
yeah. And
I
it
was
funny
kind of
because
chicken
they
to
were
try it for that reason.
they were kind of surprised by the activity, which is a good thing,
Yeah.
right? Because they've gone through
Yeah.
so much. And yeah, they did really well with the imagery, actually. Yeah. And I know one of my friends does not do well with metaphors, but has done well with some of the metaphors in that. So yeah.
Can you describe, because I have no idea what you're talking about. So, and maybe some of our listeners do too, but I would love to know, can you just give us like a brief little, like, what is ACT? And can you give us an example of what it is that you're talking about?
Sure. So it stands for acceptance and commitment therapy. So it really aligns with just accepting your thoughts, your emotions, right, versus trying to minimize them. The theory is that the more we try to, like, say, reduce the symptoms, the more we're actually increasing them and reinforcing them over time. So that's kind of and there's very much a lot of values work that you do in it, right? Aligning with what your kind of, your values, and does that align with who you are, and how do we make those things match a little bit better? And then the activity we were talking about is called Leaves on a Stream. So it's a cognitive diffusion activity, meaning I'm trying to distance myself from my thoughts. So if I'm having, say, thought rumination, this would be a good activity for. And basically you have the client kind of picture that they're alongside of a stream and they're watching leaves go by, and they're just going to place their thoughts on those leaves without judgment. That's it.
And you have the perfect
activity.
voice to do that. Can I say
Thank
that?
you.
Like I felt tranquil just listening. I'm watching my anxiety. It's floating down the stream. And I'm saying hello and goodbye to my anxiety.
Hello and goodbye. Yeah, like I love this meme that I have. It's like an ACT, after ACT therapy, or it's a kid on a train, and it's, he's like freaking out because there's like sounds and all those kind of things. And then after therapy, he's still on the train and those things are still happening, but he's just there. And that's okay. Like learning how to be okay with those things versus fighting those things. Yeah.
It's good stuff. I went to my first ACT training at CASP. That's the only reason I know anything about it. I was
with Dr. Holland, probably. Right?
She was fantastic.
Yes.
Totally fantastic. You should be her when you grow up. Like that.
She's my Sac State, alum too.
Okay.
Yes.
I was like, I don't know who this lady is, but she's amazing.
Oh,
she's a really good speaker.
She taught my classes when I went to college. So probably where this full circle comes from. Yes.
Okay, this is super embarrassing, but I have totally gone to her training. So the fact that I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about. As soon as you actually said what, the acronym did not do anything for me. So thank you. And then I was like, oh my God, because I was like the SCASP president and I introduced her. I was there. I was like, I did the whole thing. Okay. So
awesome.
Embarrassing. Okay. And yeah, she was amazing. And it's also one of those trainings that for me, I'm like, I'm never going to be doing this.
Right.
So I couldn't then, it didn't come to life for me because I didn't practice any of it.
So Jana, your loves are assessment, and consultation. Like those are your jams. Do you do behavior? Are you a behavior girl?
No. I mean,
Behavior.
no, not really. Not really. I mean, I can do it, but not really. Like, yeah, I really love digging into
Data.
Yeah.
Data
Yeah.
makes
And
Jana
but
happy.
not like, but the other thing is I will also say I use data, but I'm not tied to data. The more I give these tests, the more I don't know how meaningful they are. I mean, it's so bad to say. But like, you know what I mean?
No, I agree. I agree.
So-
Half the time on my IEE reports lately, I'm like, well, view this with caution because the kid was sitting upside down at the table and was completely refusing to participate, like, all right, great.
I think we focus too much on the tests and not just the qualitative, like looking at the child and family holistically. Actually, that's literally the name of our training in January, is looking beyond standardized testing for autism, because there's so many, like, it's going to be missed, right? In so many different cases. It's not, or it's going to get picked up like every single thing, right? If you just give a rating scale, or even the ADOS or MCDOS or these kind of things, right?
Yep.
And I feel like that's just what takes time to like really lean into your clinical like expertise, and that your interviewing skills and those kind of things, right? Really is where like, I think, you get so much information.
Yep. That and the process and the observations that you have during testing.
Oh,
and like more of that informal data that you get. And like, and that's one of the things, like when I do trainings, I give a lot of trainings talking about achievement testing and just how amazing it is to like watch kids doing achievement testing, which we don't get to do most of the time as school psychologists, but that I've now been doing for over 10 years with all of my private practice clients. And that gives me so much more information than usually our cognitive tests do, or the tests that we're used to giving. And so I'm really trying to help school psychologists understand that aspect of it too, because most of the time,
so boring to give, Jana.
No, but that's so important. We're testing for learning disabilities, and don't
I understand that they're
read or do
and
math.
I get a lot of information out of it. I get so much information out of it, but I am just like, oh my God.
So the opposite. I'm like, oh my God, let me see you spell this way. Wait, you spelled it this way here, but you spelled it that way there.
I'm glad that that's your answer. It just like you have to like,
do we really need to get 6 wrong in a row? 6? I mean, that seems like we know we're done way before that 6, right? And then that kid gets that 1 right accidentally, and they didn't even know what they were doing.
And you know which one it's going to be too.
Right.
Like, yeah. Well, see, and this is why this field is so amazing, is because we all shine in different ways, because we all love something a little bit different. And in public school practice, we have to take whatever comes our way. And in private practice, we get to make our own path.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed.
Like we can say no.
In the beginning, I said yes to everything. I'm like, I need money. Yes.
Well, that's where I'm at, probably.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I was saying.
Yes. I was like, absolutely. You want me to do what? Okay, sure. I'll figure that out.
Sure.
Never done it before, but I'm going to do it today. It's fine. Yeah.
I keep telling myself, over summer.
It does get better, Misty. I promise.
Okay.
Eventually you do get to say, you know what? No, I don't think that this is in my scope today.
Right. Yep.
Maybe tomorrow.
I had an attorney reached out and is asking to see one of our like learning disability reports, to see if like they want us to like be on it. I was like, can you give me a little bit more information as to why you want this? And I was like, I have 4 different clinicians in my practice who could potentially be doing an IEE for you. Like we're all a little bit different. Everything runs through me, but we're all a little bit different, right? I mean, and every kid is different, and we write our reports differently every time too, it's just, but I'll give them one. I just had to see what that was all about. Like
they asked for it, and it was because they wanted to see my accommodation and recommendations. They didn't even care about my report.
That's exactly how they wanted to see if I was like direct enough, I think was because they had a concern that people are being a little bit not direct enough, or not like actually putting in really good recommendations. That was their concern.
God, that's such a hard place to be, because when you talk to a school district, like I've talked to directors who, like, we just got this feedback recently where one of my psychs said something that was a little bit too directive
Right.
for the districts, like instead of saying the district should consider blah, 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 she said the district should blah, blah, blah. Right. And that was, so the feedback was, give your opinion and leave some room for flexibility for the district to then make their decision. It was really good feedback. And I've also had attorneys on the other side of that be like, I want you to recommend something really specific.
Right.
But we know that it's an IEP team, like, conversation, like it's something that should be considered. And so that's where I find it's hard.
A lot of lawyers don't really know the rules.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, many do, but I've met several now that I'm just like, no, that's not how this works.
We should
I
have
feel
some
like
attorneys come on our show.
Oh yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Sometimes our advocates are a little bit more intense than our attorneys, at least in this area, that I found. And yeah, some were very much like, oh, people have been siding with this or that. How are you going to side? I'm like, well, I'm going to side for the child. But in that conversation, that's how they were. Yeah, it was very interesting. And yeah, we don't have a huge group of LEPs here, so they were kind of referring to people I probably know, right? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do anything different than what they do. They're my colleagues. So I also felt like there were some I might not want to work with after doing some of the reach out, and that was okay too, to some extent.
Yeah, we always screen IEEs when they come in. It's not, we will not just take any IEE. We want to make sure that we even have the skill set, right? Like if somebody were coming to me and wanted like a really in-depth mental health assessment for, as an IEE, ERMS assessment, I would not take it. I would give it to one of my other psychologists, who specializes there. But like if someone, if they needed something that we didn't either, number one, feel like was really our cup of tea, or like someone reached out for an FBA the other day and I was like, no, whoops, here's my thumb again. We will not do FBAs. But also parents who have like an agenda, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
I really want to be able to be objective and child-centered, and I don't want to be bullied or pushed by parent agenda or attorney or advocate agenda either.
100%. When you get the call of they're already placed unilaterally at the school, we're just getting an assessment to validate that decision, something like that. I'm kind of rephrasing. Maybe we'll, refer it to somebody else. Not my cup of tea.
Well, Misty, okay. So the last question I'll ask you, because we should wrap up, is, what, I guess as we're moving into 2024,
right?
What do you see for Get Psyched LLC? What are some goals or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think kind of to Bethany's point, like honing in on really what I wanted to do, which was mental health in schools, right? And doing more trainings now that we've got a few under our belt, and it was so scary at the beginning to put myself out there in that way. Each time it gets a little easier, and I'm building a, some resources that I can pull from and not start from scratch every single time. But really to grow that piece, because I feel like that is such a need. And that was why I started this business. Probably not in 2024 until June, because there are certain contracts and things that I've wrapped myself into. I've learned, but kind of pausing in July and thinking what do I really want to focus on next year? How much money do I make from XYZ? And and hopefully growing the team. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I love how you said that, because there are definitely people who are like, I'm going to work by myself. I am never going to have a team. No. And then there are others of us who are like, I'm going to have a team. Yeah. I always knew I was going to have a team. You don't want to team, Bethany?
No,
I don't like managing people.
Oh, I love that part of it. I mean, it's a pain in the rear, but
and I'm it's funny because I'm a university supervisor mentor person for a bunch of school psych babies, and I enjoy that aspect, like coaching and providing feedback and but I don't. And maybe it's just because I just got recently burned and I had to fire someone. So maybe give me some time and I'll watch that leaf pass down the water and I can rebuild my trust. Because my intern is phenomenal, but I had another person that was completely well, she wasn't a good fit. Let's just say that. And so I'm just like, I did not like that experience of managing. And then when you do that, like Jana is, I'm pointing the wrong way on my screen.
You're my inspiration, Jana.
Yeah. Like she's got all these people, but now her job is very administrative and she enjoys that.
Yeah.
But I don't particularly like that.
I
like working with people.
Yeah.
So
I will say that has been a really hard thing to balance because I have been having to do a lot of administrative work and I really love doing the work with the kids and the families. And I do not want to become the person who is not working in my practice. I still want to be working in my practice. And I think that once I get a couple more ducks in a row within these next couple of weeks, I am actually going to be in a better place to be able to be doing like less administrative. I mean, I say that now, but that is like probably not the case because yeah, when you have a team and I'm expanding. So, so scratch that. I mean, I know that's not going to happen. I just need to have more time in my day. Ha ha ha. But no, it really is difficult to manage a team. It's also extremely rewarding. And, like I'm having my first person who has resigned as well. So
mine didn't resign. Mine was told to leave.
Got it. Yeah, mine resigned. But I mean, it was a huge learning experience for me. Managing all the different personalities and what people need and providing, and even just the pressure of like needing to get people business, like there's a lot that goes into that. But I always knew that I wanted to have a team. And Misty, I'm in your.
I mean, I have a person that helps a little with assessment right now. And it's been an interesting journey already, right? Because also they were on a complicated case and the district didn't really agree with certain findings and these kind of things that you don't think through all the way. So it was, it's been an interesting journey already.
Yep.
But it's something I'm really passionate about. So I will definitely,
Yeah.
You're my inspiration to do that at some point.
Yeah.
But slowly,
Awesome.
very, very slowly.
Well, congratulations. I'm excited for you. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's so interesting.
Thank you.
Misty.
Yeah.
We're so excited for you. We're going to cheer you on as we see you more and more in your trainings and all the things that you're going to shine in. So thank you so much for being here and being our first person on our podcast.
Thank you. I feel so honored. Thank you so much, Jana and Bethany. You're such an inspiration to me. And I'm really excited to spread that knowledge and experience for more LEPs to take the leap. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Empower LEP Collaborative Podcast. Episodes can be found at empowerlepcollaborative.com. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast player. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, or if you have any questions for us, don't hesitate to connect. We would love to learn more. Jana can be found at jana@empowerlep.com, and Bethany can be reached at bethany@lepcollaborative.com.